What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Real Life Podcast. I'm Brian.
And I'm Craig.
Man, we're going to jump into it today. I think it's a pretty good conversation that we're going to have. I think we're going to get to see a contrast between the two of us in the conversation today.
Okay, I'm excited.
So today we're going to talk about why is it difficult for introverts to make friends? Maybe that's not the right way to say it, but that's the way that I see it.
Yeah.
So
right out of the bat, you've gone after the introverts. You've been critical here.
right, which is probably their deepest fear. But
and if you can't work it out so far, then I'm the introvert. He's the extrovert.
Yeah, for sure. I have been called several things in my life, and one of them has been extrovert.
Mm-hmm. and you definitely are that.
Yeah, and you're introverted.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'm jealous of an introvert, especially because I said on Sunday, like my mouth gets me in trouble from time to time because I'm just in a conversation and I'll put stuff out there, and sometimes I regret some of it. And then I'll see you talk, and it seems like you're so thoughtful about your words.
Is that right?
Yeah. And sometimes I can't tell. It's like, man, I give you the benefit of the doubt always that you're being really thoughtful, and not that like you might be just a little introverted.
Well, I would say it would be the lack of my mouth that's got me in trouble more. When people say, I thought you were thinking, or you didn't say anything, so I thought, and just the being silent and saying nothing, which is often a default position, is disconcerting for other people.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I think that might have to do with silence in a conversation. Mm-hmm. Like I struggle with silence in a conversation. Like I want to fill it with noise. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Whereas I could stand awkwardly and just stare at someone for minutes at a time and be okay with it. So.
No, but I mean, even that's interesting though. It's like I'll fill it with noise, often what I would regret. And then in a conversation where you'd be silent, other people might fill it with noise just in their head. Right. Oh, he's thinking this or he's saying that.
So let's back up here a little bit.
That's a good idea.
And let's define what we mean by extrovert, introvert.
It's
very
thoughtful.
That's very introverted of me. And we're not going to get the definitions perfect, but here's a couple of thoughts that I have. So I'll go with the introvert because that's what I feel more comfortable with. The way I've read it, the way I've seen it defined, is that it's someone who prefers to, gets energy from, and likes to be alone more than they like to be with other people.
Yeah.
And let's understand introverts and extroverts, it's a scale that moves up and down, and you can be, you're not this or that. But
it's not like
if you're more introverted, you like to be alone. Mm-hmm. That's the thing.
Yeah. And so an extrovert is definitely would be the opposite of that. Like I thrive, or I get really energized being around people.
Yep.
Like I like that.
Right.
Like even at my house, and some of you guys who know me know this. Like I have a full gym in my garage. Mm-hmm. Like a legit respectable. I could work out in my garage every single day.
Right.
By myself and just play music. I do that one day a week. Yeah. Like every other day.
You have to go and work out with other people down at the local gym.
Yeah, down at the YMCA.
Yeah.
That's what I do. And I'll work out with people and they'll be like, oh, it's packed in here. And I'm like, I know, isn't it great?
All right. So what would be your definition for extrovert?
Yeah, it would be the opposite. Someone who thrives off of being around people. Yeah. But I'm careful to say not necessarily someone who thrives off of having a connection with people, but really just thrives off of being around people, like that energy, like you feed off of.
So here's the interesting thing, because we talk a lot about, and one thing I've learned is that we are built for a relationship. God designed us for a relationship. We are communal beings. We have meaning and purpose by being around others. So hang on a sec, isn't that like the opposite of what an introvert is defined as? And I would say this, I do love being around people. I do enjoy those relationships, but they're often harder to build and I like fewer of them and more deeper relationships is how I would describe as an introvert.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, part of me just doesn't understand that. If I'm honest, like part of me, especially when I was younger and I knew everything, I always assumed if you were introverted, you were just rude.
Yeah.
Like you were just a rude person.
I've been called that.
Yeah. Like, oh man, these people they're just not friendly.
Right.
They're rude.
Right.
Or they're stuck up.
Yep.
Or all these different things that I would ascribe to an introvert that I now know isn't true. It isn't the case. But I still have such a hard time understanding, like, why don't you want to be around other people?
Right.
Like, isn't that fun? And don't get me wrong, there are moments in my life that I've certainly experienced where it's like, I don't want to see a human being at all.
Yeah.
Like, but typically, for me, that means I'm not doing too well.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I see someone who's like, oh, I just want to get by myself, I'm like, what's going on? What's wrong? Is there something wrong with you?
Yeah.
Like, are you sick?
Yep.
Do you need to go to dinner with me? You want to hang out with me?
Yep.
And they're like, no,
Nope.
They just told you they don't
I
want to be
alone
around anyone.
time,
And I'm like,
please, now. Leave me alone.
I just assume that it's like, oh, there must be something wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that so again, we've just talked about the spectrum. Being an introvert doesn't mean that you don't like people, you don't want to be around people. It just means that you prefer more alone time, but you're okay. You still want relationships, but they look a little different. Being the extrovert
but that also doesn't mean that I want deep relationships, or even that I really like people.
Yeah.
Right. Like, oh man, I love all kinds of like. I think as I've matured and developed, I can appreciate lots of different kinds of people.
Right.
But I think that in the same way that I can make an assumption about an extrovert or an introvert, that you just don't want friends, or you don't want any connection with anybody, like, or there's something wrong with you. I think another assumption of an extrovert could be, oh well, you just you just want to be friends with everybody, and you just XYZ.
Please shut up. is the critical assumption I would make of extroverts. Like, why do you want to talk to everybody all the time? Please be quiet.
Yes. Or how do you know everyone in here? That's what people have asked me so many times. Like, I'll be in a room or I'll be in an environment, and somebody will go, "How do you know everyone in here?" And I'm like, I don't.
Yeah. And how are you best friends with them? And how do you talk to them all the time? And
I don't.
It took me 20 gazillion tons of energy to just go up and talk to one person, and you're there talking to all of them. So, I don't get it.
Yeah, I think that this is like, I think everybody can kind of relate in one way or another, especially maybe it's in your romantic relationship. Like maybe one of you is really extroverted and one of you is introverted, or whether it's on your job or anything. We interact with people who are different than us.
And we often find that other person intriguing, and I think that's why maybe husbands, wives, or best friends are often the opposite, because we're intrigued by people. I find you and others that speak live, and wow, that's kind of really interesting. I want to get to know that person because they're outgoing and they're always speaking to people, and I don't get it.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued by that.
Well, what's interesting is like I feel the exact same way. I'm like, wow, Craig really has something to say. Like he's very like I was saying, he's very thoughtful. Like I really want to sit down and talk with Craig.
Yeah.
And it's because it's basically the same thing, just opposite.
Right.
Of thinking.
And isn't
wow,
it wonderful how God made us all different?
Yeah, I think
Because
so.
if we were all the same, it would be boring.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. So we love the Lord. We want to celebrate Him together. We want to come together, learn about Him. And in doing that, there's other people around. And in doing that as an introvert, there's this, there's this fear factor that starts to rise.
Yeah.
And so, I'd love to unpack a little bit about that. How as an introvert can you do better in a church environment? And how, as an extrovert, can we handle those introverts a little better in a church environment?
So for me, as an extrovert, I'll go ahead and own that. But for me, when I'm encountering an introvert, or to go back to the question of well, how do you make friends or anything like that? It's like, well, just be friendly.
Yeah.
Like, just be friendly. The Bible even says, like,
You're speaking another language to
hey,
me now.
if you want to have friends, be friendly.
Yeah.
Like, that's in Proverbs. So it's like, well, just be friendly.
Yeah,
that's
and I read that and I'm like looking for the concordance because I
like that can't mean be friendly.
What does that mean?
There's got to be Hebrew behind that.
I don't even know what that means. Yeah.
Yeah. So why do you think it's difficult for an introvert to just be friendly like that, like what we're talking about?
Yeah, really good question.
So for you, like, why is it difficult for you?
So there's a couple of ways we can go with this. Where I would go with it is because we're in our head so much. This from me. I'll talk for myself. I'm in my head so much that I'm thinking so much about myself because I'm being selfish and I'm not got my eyes on Christ and I'm not got my eyes on other people. That therefore I'm very critical of myself. Therefore I'm thinking that little pimple on my face looks like a huge wart, and that you will see it. If I attempt to be friends with you, if I attempt to have a relationship with you, you're going to see my faults and you're going to see them hugely, and then that would lead to then rejection, abandonment, lack of friends. So the fear of moving into a relationship is huge.
Yeah.
And I've been there.
Yeah.
And it is huge.
So
I'd much rather not even face that fear. I'd much rather run away from it than to let you see my warts and all. And then, so the other way of handling it is, well, I'll just put on the face of an extrovert and I'll act out, right? But then where I go with that is, you love the face, you don't really know me.
Oh, because it's not you.
It's not me.
It's not you. It's just a show.
It's just a show that I
like
put
you
on.
take a big breath and go, okay, this is...
I got a couple of years under my belt and I've learned over the years how to put on the face. And so I get good at putting on the face, but I still don't have those deep relationships because you only know my face and don't know the true me.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting.
And maybe this is just me and everyone's reading it, listening to this is going, Craig, you're weird. Maybe there might be one or two that are getting it.
I think I've encountered lots of people where I feel like they overthink. Mm-hmm. Like that's basically what you said, that you're in your head. You're thinking, what will this person think? Well, that's a lot of overthinking.
Yes.
You know? And I would say, I don't do that.
I have found as I've gone on a little years that people are thinking less about me and more about themselves.
Yeah.
And then they're not worried in at least as much as I think they are about me.
Yeah, that's probably the reality. That's what.
Yeah.
I think that's what most people are thinking about them, instead of thinking about, like, oh, well, you know, how is this other person?
What are they thinking of me?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm going to get rejected. Oh, no, I'm not going to have a relationship. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Well, I think it's one of those things that's really interesting, because whether you're introverted or extroverted, like a deep, meaningful relationship is what both people would enjoy. Like, I want a deep, meaningful relationship.
Absolutely we do, yeah.
But what happens with an extrovert is, like, I'm friendly with a lot of people, but I don't know many people.
Yeah.
Because I'm friendly with a lot of them.
Right.
And not a lot of people know me. I'm just friendly with a lot of them. And it's because I get a lot of energy off of, like, friendly
having a lot of interactions.
Yeah. And I think it's because, and this might not go for all extroverts, but this might sound incredibly arrogant coming out of my mouth, but I just assume most people would like me.
Yeah.
I was like, I just make that assumption. Like, I think most people would like me. Like,
right.
Especially if I'm friendly. Like, I'm not giving you a reason not to like me.
Right.
Or at least I don't think I am.
Yep.
I've also come to know and understand that there's plenty of people that don't like me. Like, there's plenty of people that don't. But I just make that assumption that you know, you're probably going to like me. And
right.
So,
whereas I tend to make the assumption that I'm going to not like myself before you don't like me. I'm going to get there first.
Yeah.
And therefore you'll never get to know me.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And yet, you know, what I'm thinking about there as we talk about this is you guys may have watched Brene Brown. If you haven't, look her up. She's a psychologist out of Houston. Studied thousands of people, and the ones that she found that were able to have deeper connections with others were those that had this sense of value, of worth. And that's not thinking that other people, that I'm somehow better. It's not thinking that, everyone's going to like me because I'm good. It's just saying I'm valuable, I'm a worthwhile human being because God loves me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I go there, that's way easier place to start having relationships with other people.
I'll be honest with you, I don't think I was, I don't want to say I wasn't able. I wasn't good at having meaningful relationships until I got there. And to be honest with you, that wasn't till my late 20s.
So there is
getting to the place where I have worth and value.
A sense of worth, yeah.
Because I think an introvert and extrovert have the same fear. Mm-hmm. We address it differently.
Yeah, there you go.
It's the same fear of like, well, you might not like me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to assume that you will, and I'm going to have short interactions with you that are friendly and positive.
Right.
So you probably will like me.
Yep.
Instead of allowing you to really know me,
mm-hmm.
I'm going to keep you at a distance. My distance just has a smiley face. Yeah.
Whereas as an introvert, I'm thinking the same. You're not going to really like me because I don't feel I have worth and value, and therefore I'm going to run in the door and run out the door as quick as possible and just do what I have to do to get by in those interactions and have zero conversation or as little as I possibly can.
Yeah. Well, especially not one that's like deep and meaningful.
Yep.
Like I think it's really funny to get a bunch of extroverts sitting around at a table together. Like if there was,
I don't think it's funny.
Oh man, if there's 4 extroverts sitting around a table together, we are all having our own conversation and not talking to each other at all. We're just talking at each other, and like I'm having my conversation, this guy's having his, and like we're all just there, and everybody looks like, wow, those guys are having a great time. It's like we're not talking to each other.
Right.
Like,
which reminds me of the T-shirt I saw once. Says "Introverts unite, alone."
Yeah. That's fun.
A bunch of introverts sitting around a table just go,
yeah,
just blank stares at each other.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Well, like for me at Wellspring with our Sunday gatherings, I'd say it every week. Like my favorite time is like when we do the high five, like hey, turn your neighbor, say what's up. Like we spend a little bit of time doing that. I think we spend a little bit extra time doing that than a lot of places that I've been, because I think it's important.
Yep.
And really, I love watching it. Like I don't, because typically I teach immediately after that.
Right.
And so I'll have some conversations and I'll like, wander around the room
and just
like
be
really,
seeing who else is interacting.
Yeah. But I really enjoy watching people interact, like, and talk. And I almost like get energy off of just watching people do that.
Right.
Like, I actually think it's getting a little out of hand sometimes because I'll go to start and I'll be like, all right, I got to fill this. I got about a minute of just like talking while people stop their conversations.
Yeah.
and I dig that. Like, I like it.
Well, that and home groups, right? And any time we get together as believers or as any other human being, there is something absolutely critical and meaningful and purposeful about relationships and about building relationships. And for me, there's nothing more fulfilling as an introvert than taking the time to have those relationships be built on a deeper level. Yeah,
and I think house church has a particular intentional environment for that. All of our house churches, it's kind of one of the things that...
Which is scaring all the introverts listening to this right now. That's why I don't go.
Yeah. I know.
I'm not going to one of those.
I don't want to go to a house church because there's an intentional environment. Like, I don't want to do that.
And they're going to get to know me and see me.
Yeah. I get it. But for me, it's good to have that intentional... I know it's good for me to have that intentional environment because... My tendency is let's keep relationships up here, surface level. Like, let's just keep them up here because that way people like will always, oh, Brian, he's funny. Like he's great.
Yeah. Or you can always chat and I can just stand there and listen to him and he'll keep the conversation going and I don't have to say anything.
It's just superficial, but I know it's good for me to have an intentional environment where, like we're still going to talk like what's going on in your life and just we're going to laugh and it's a good environment.
Right.
But also, like we're going to have like some real moments like where we talk about where we put the mask down for a little bit. And that is so good. Like, but I think the word for that intentional environment and what I long for, even in our Sunday gatherings as a whole, is safe. Like, that's the intentional environment, is it's safe. Like, I'm not going to try to fix you.
Right.
I'm not going to judge you to death.
Yep.
Like, there are lots of churches that I've been a part of for a long time that are like, hey, man, you're welcome here. This is home. Like, you don't have to be perfect. Come as you are. Yeah. Like, you can be broken and all this stuff. Yeah. And then when broken people show up, you're like, whoa.
Yeah. You need to fix that.
Yeah.
Let me come here. I'm going to fix you.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Or, hey, let me drop you on our growth track so you can
we got
wear
a
our
program
t-shirt.
to fix
and
you. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like,
right.
Let's do all this stuff because I wasn't expecting this. Like, you're actually messed up.
Right.
And it's like, that's not safe for people. And whether you're introverted or extroverted, that is ultimately going to repel you.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're extroverted, it's a little enticing because you're like, ooh, I get to have these superficial relationships, but ultimately it's unsatisfactory.
Right.
Like, so it doesn't satisfy that gnawing that you have for a deep, true relationship. And so again, like you're talking about, that's why house church is the core of what we do at Wellspring. Like,
it is. And for those introverts, yes, it's going to hurt. It's going to be painful. It's going to be a little uncomfortable for the first 1 or 15 times. But at some point, you will build the deeper relationships that we all absolutely long for. And we really do want those.
Like, what I've heard from a few people that are part of Wellspring is that phrase that you've said already is, I don't know if they really knew me, though they would like me. Like, what if they really knew that I was this or that, or if I, and a lot of it has to do with maybe some messed up church culture or some misplaced presuppositions, but like the idea of like, well, someone might drink. And they're like, well, I don't want to let people know that I drink,
right?
Because like they might think something, or I cuss. I don't know if I want these people to know. I don't know if I want church people to know that I cuss or I drink or I whatever. And if you're out there and you're listening, and you think that I would judge you because you cuss and you drink, I have way bigger issues than those. Like, so if those are your issues, like I am way more messed up than just cussing and drinking.
And again, this may just be me, but I suspect there might be a few other people thinking this one. They'll go, well, yeah, but those aren't really bad sins. My mistakes in my life are really bad. And if you really knew them, then you really wouldn't like me. And to that, I would say, try me.
Yeah, and
try me, because
ultimately, like
the mistakes I've made and the stuff I've done in my life is horrible, absolutely horrible.
Same,
and we've all been there, and that's the point of being able to come together and have friends and be able to share those things. Because I find, frankly, as you get to know someone, trust someone, and are safe, use that word, and you share those things, and the relationship becomes deeper.
Yeah.
Then you say, aha, this is what I've wanted all my life.
And for me, I said earlier, probably about, 15 minutes ago, I didn't really get a lot of that until I was late in my 20s. I was already a believer. I was already a pastor in ministry.
20 years before I did.
I was already all that stuff. But having the realization that Christ really loves me. Like,
no matter what.
Like,
no matter what.
God loves you way more than you realize.
Yep.
Period. Like, God loves you way more than you realize. And you say, well, I don't know, I think I'm grasping it. No. God loves you way more than you realize.
Yep.
And grabbing a hold of that and understanding that is where the deeper relationships that all of us long for, like, it comes from that. Like if you can't start to grasp that or start to accept that, then your pursuit or your desire for deep, satisfying relationships will never be met.
Yep.
Like you'll constantly be surface level, or you'll constantly keep people at a distance.
Yep.
And you'll never be really fully known, and you'll never know anyone in a deep, meaningful way. And so
that's a painful way to live.
Yeah, and so whatever relationship it is, I don't care if it's your marriage, I don't care if it's like just your friends, I don't care if it's coworkers, I don't care, like you'll always struggle for a deep, meaningful relationship until you understand that God loves you way more than you realize.
And you have inherent worth and value to him.
Yeah, period. And then from that, okay, I might still be a little afraid. I might still get rejected.
Yep.
You might still not like me.
Yep. But
I can survive that. Like, you'd be shocked how survivable that fact is.
Not only is that survivable, but I've found a number of times as I've pushed myself through the fear and shared some things about me that I have never wanted to share with others, and because in the midst of that sharing, or because of that sharing, that I have deeper relationships with people.
Yeah.
Then we're onto something.
Yeah.
And then that's way more fulfilling than anything.
For sure. And one thing that's really incredible is if you can ever get to that place, then you can actually have relationships with people where your response to someone not liking you is, well, I like you anyway.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Like, well, I like you anyway.
Yep.
Like, and that's something that is completely separate from culture.
Mm-hmm.
Culture is, well, if you don't like me,
I'm not going to like you.
Well, I don't like you.
Right.
Like, well, then...
Yeah. Or if you don't do this, then I'm not going to like you.
Yeah, 100%.
It's this conditional stuff.
Yeah, where, man, like the core to the gospel is God makes his enemies his friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like that.
Love your neighbor.
That's what Christ does.
Yep.
Love your enemy.
And love your enemy.
And he turns them into his friends.
Yep.
And so if
someone hits you on one cheek, give them the other.
Yeah. I become more like Christ, I can start to live out of that space where even as I'm rejected, I still like you.
Right.
Like, I'll like you anyway.
Yep.
Like, it's fine.
And let's be clear, just to those introverts out there, don't go rushing into church on Sunday and start spilling your guts to everybody.
That would be awesome.
And then blaming, Craig and Brian for telling them to do that. That's not what we
You said I could tell everybody my secrets.
And that it would be safe and that they're going to love you anyway. Yeah. Take your time, work into this slowly, build some trust, and you'll find that the relationships are incredibly fulfilling.
Yeah. My heart and hope is that Wellspring is a place where people it's safe.
Yeah.
Where people can say, well, this is where I'm at. Mm-hmm. And the reaction isn't, yikes.
Don't know how to deal with that. Or you can't come to our church anymore.
Or it's like, well, don't tell anybody that.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
My hope is it's a place where as we pursue that deep life and that deep relationship with Christ and live out of that the natural outcome is deep relationships with other people, regardless of fear. Like, that doesn't mean I'm instantly going to not be afraid. Right. There's going to be some of that there. But I don't have deep relationships because I think that you'll never hurt me. Mm-hmm. I have deep relationships because I'm brave.
Yeah.
And the same thing for you.
Right.
Like, you don't have deep relationships because that person will never hurt you. That person will never betray you. That person will never be wrong to you.
And just to be clear, I'm still just as capable of hurting you as well.
Yeah, 100%. But the reason why you do that is because you're brave, not because you expect other people to be perfect.
Right.
And that's a that's a scary place to be. But being brave doesn't mean that you're not afraid.
Yep.
That just means that you're also brave.
Right.
That's part of it.
Right. So to all you introverts out there, from one introvert to another, I'd encourage you to push forward, to face your fear. And some of the greatest words that you can hear, or that I could say to somebody else, is "me too," or "I love you even more" because of what you shared.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're great words to hear when you open up.
Yeah, and introverts, just view extroverts as golden retrievers. Just be charitable, be charitable to us. We're just golden retrievers, and extroverts.
Is this time where I'll rub behind your ears?
Yeah. And I'll be like, "Oh, we're friends for life, man." Yeah. But and extroverts, when you look at an introvert, also be charitable.
Yeah.
Like, maybe don't assume, well, that person's probably just having a terrible day.
Right.
Like, or they're just unfriendly. They're
Friendly,
rude.
right? Rude, yes.
Maybe also be charitable and keep trying.
Yeah.
Like be a golden retriever when it comes to relationships. I'm just going to keep on coming around you.
I love that God made us all different. I really do. And that's okay. That's
awesome.
Perfect. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. Why don't you come see us live Sundays for our gatherings for Wellspring at the Levin YMCA in downtown Pensacola. And I will be super friendly to you, 100%. And Craig will wave.
And I won't.
Yeah. All right, guys.
See ya.